holes, how we use that to then put into a sectional drawing and add the hole notes onto that drawing. So we're going to start off first with making them. So you're just going to start in a standard part file. And I'm going to start by just making the block where the holes are going to go in. So we'll start here at the XZ plane and just make a rectangle that is 2 by 4. And we're going to extrude that by 3. So that gives us the block where we can add our holes. Now for this case, in this example, we're just going to get them each separated by 1 inch. So I'm going to start here on one of the short sides from the middle. Just bring it straight down for me by 1 inch, just so I have something for my hole to snap to. Okay, so we're going to start here with this hole. And then we're going to make sure it is going to the end of that line. All right, so depending on what your last hole was, or the defaults might be different. So the first one, we're going to base it off of this one. So it says it has a diameter of 0.5 and it is through. It is a simple hole because it doesn't say anything below it about a countersink or a counter bore. So we go back to Inventor. So for the first part here, the holes, we don't really need to touch this. These parts have threaded stuff if we needed to add them for a certain case. But for ours, it's just going to be this plain simple hole right here. The seat is where you add whether it's a counter bore for this one or a countersink here. Since it is neither of them, we're going to click none to make it a simple hole. Termination is how far does it go down. So if we had an actual depth, that would be the distance one here, but we don't. So it is a through all. So we want to click that one, which gives us, or tells Inventor that it's going through the whole thing. Direction we don't need to worry about. It's going the right way. And then finally, the only option really that we have is the diameter of that hole. So we're going to make that 0.5. It adjusts. We click OK, and that's our first hole there. I'll tell you, if you were making this, I would probably suggest just to make a circle and do a cut extrusion down through it. Probably a lot simpler, but we're going through all of them. So next hole, again, just like we did before, we are going to space it out by 1 inch. We're going to go center to center. So I'm going to take my line command again, and you might notice here I don't actually have a center point. So if I just kind of like hover around and move around that circumference of that circle, you see here we now have that center point will come up. So we'll click there. We'll bring it down 1 inch in that same direction. And that gets us where we're putting our next hole. So we go there, hole again. At the end of it, you can see there it brings up that one from the last one. So now we look at the next one. This one says it has a diameter of 0.375, a depth of 2. Now here we have a counter bore that has a diameter of 0.75 and a depth of 0.5. So we need to put all of that into Inventor and make sure we're on the right path. So again, for the whole part, this section we don't need to touch. It's just straight through. There's no threads or anything like that. The seat we're going to change because we talked about it's going to be a counter bore. So we're going to add the counter bore. It did give us an actual depth, so we need to change our determination to an actual distance. Okay. Now it will have this option here of drill point for our part. We're not going to really change it. That goes along with the 118 degrees. That is just a standard degree there for it. You could change it, but it doesn't tell us to change it, and we don't need to worry about that. So now we have these 4 measurements here. We are given them, it's just where they go. So these top 2 here go to the counter bore. Okay, so this right here, the top one would be for the diameter of it, and the second one here is for the depth. So if we go back here, we look for the counter bore part, which is the second line. You have a diameter of 0.75 and a depth of 0.5. So that goes on top. So the 0.75 goes on top. And then the next one underneath is that 0.5. All right, so the next 2 measurements here. This one represents the depth of the hole. And then this 0.5 is the diameter of the actual hole. So again, we come back here, that's the top line. I know it's confusing because the top line goes at the bottom and then the bottom line here goes on the top of Inventor. It's tricky, just try and be careful with that. So we have a diameter of 0.375 and a depth of 2. So we're going to put that in there. Diameter of 0.375, that goes on the very bottom. And then the one right above it is 2. So that's what it should look like on our hole. And we can click OK. Now we've got the second one. All right, and you can kind of see there the counter bore has that like little shelf here, the bigger cylinder to a smaller cylinder to hide the bolt. All right, last one we're going to make is the countersink one. So we're going to do the same process, center to center, 1 inch. So we start a sketch on top, make our line, again, kind of drag around, get that center point there, and going down in that same direction, we're going to make it 1. And then again, make our hole at that end. Okay, so we go look back, and on this one, so it says it has a diameter of 0.25, a depth of 2.25. There is a countersink, that's what the V is, that has a diameter of 1 by that 82 degrees. Okay, the degrees is another one. You don't need to change it, it's a standard thing. So just like the last one, hole stays the same. Our seat is what's going to change, so it's not a counter bore anymore. The countersink is this last one here. Termination, it had a depth, it didn't say through, so we can leave that there. Everything else we don't need to change. So when we look at it here, this top number again is the countersink diameter, that's at the top. This is that 82 degrees of the countersink. Again, it's standard, we don't need to change that. The 2 that represents is the depth, and then this bottom one is your diameter of the hole. So again, we go back to kind of just get for that countersink, that has a diameter of 1. So we're gonna put that up at the top. Now for the other parts, if we go back, just as a reminder, that one had a diameter of 0.25 and a depth of 2.25. So we come over here, this is the depth again, we're gonna change to 2.25, and then that diameter was 0.25, and that gives us our holes there. So you can see here, if we tip it, the difference between a simple hole, which is just one circle all the way through, you have the counter bore, which has that bigger cylinder kind of shelf area here, and then the countersink's more like a funnel that goes down in there. All right, so the next step is we're going to bring this into a drawing file to make the section drawing, along with I'll show you how to make the hole notes on that actual drawing. So the first thing is we do have to save this, so we can bring that up. Just gonna call it practice 1. And then we are going to new and a drawing file. So we have our drawing file here. We are going to bring in our first part. So we're gonna start by clicking a base. Now for our section drawing, we do want to actually see these holes. So we do need to change that view to the top view so it looks like that. It is kind of small, so I'm going to make that scale. I'm going to bring it up 2 to 1. And I just kind of want to bring that over here. So we've got that, we're good. So for the section drawing, it is going to be this one, the section view. So we're gonna click on that. Now what it's looking for our first thing is to identify which view we're using. So in our case, it's the only one we have. So we wanna click on there. You'll see our cursor turns from a mouse to a little crosshairs there, where we wanna draw what line we're basically sectioning off or splitting our part in to see the insides. So we're gonna go to one of our short sides here in the middle, click there, and then all the way down to the other end, middle, click there, and you can see it cut it all in half. And to finish it off, we just need to right click and continue. So you can see here, there it brings up all of your drawings for the section part. And that's just how you make the section drawing. The last little bit is you come over here to annotate. You will see holes and threads right here. That's how we can add our hole notes. So all we gotta do is come over here and click on the opening or basically any part of it, and we can click to place it. And that would be the exact same thing we based our hole off of. And we have all 3 of them right there. So that completes our drawing that we need.